Hello, everyone. I can see that there's a few people already watching us. How are you doing, everybody? Please say hi to us in the chat. I'm Angie. I'll be your host for today. Here with me, I have our product team, Daniil and Fabian.
Yeah.
How's everybody doing? It's still summer in Berlin, but actually it's a sunny day now. I'm based out in Berlin, I think with Daniil as well. And yeah, hello, Robert. Hello, Mahaver. Lola. It's finally a little bit of a summer in Berlin, right?
Yeah, it's pretty unbearable though in the home office, I would say.
Yeah, a bit too much. I agree.
Yeah, I think we're lucky that we have a cool corner here in the office. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fun. So I want to also say hi to people in the chat and then give you a proper introduction to our hosts for today. Where is everybody watching us from? Do we have some Berliners as well? Mario says the session is between me and the water. Berlin as well, yes. So I think it's time for a proper intro. I think we have quite a few people that are joining already. I'm Angie. I'm a field marketing manager here at Hygraph. I'll be your main host for today. Along with our product team here, we have Daniil, our head of product, previously as an editor experience product manager, and he's been working with content management throughout his entire career. I'll put his LinkedIn profile here in the chat just in case you want to connect with him or chat with him after the event. Do you have any questions? And we also have Fabian. He's our senior product manager. And a fun fact about Fabian is that he's actually Hygraph's number 2 employee. We started working at Hygraph doing everything from customer support, and now the PM for the Beyond team. I'll put his LinkedIn profile also in the chat just in case you want to connect with him. And before we get started with the question, I want to remind everyone that we'll have Q&A in the end of the session, but you can leave your questions throughout the entire presentations. If we have a lot of questions during the first presentation, we'll get to them as well. I also have a few questions, I think. And so I think we can kick it off. First off, I'd like to invite Fabian.
Sounds good. Let's go.
I'll put your screen in the main presentation, and yes, the stage is yours. You can take it away.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here. Today I want to talk about a couple of features we've been working on in the last quarter, and I want to kick this off with one of our older additions from the last quarter, Content Finder. With Content Finder, we wanted to build a solution that makes it easier for editors, but also for developers to find any piece of content really, and also no matter where it's used in your specific environment. And without further ado, I want to jump right into sharing actually a demo of how that works. So over here in a project, I created some demo content, so specifically for like a fake merch shop that we could use for Hygraph with some products here. Previously, what you could do is with the search bar up top here, you were able to search for content entries specific to this content model, but it was also only searching for fields that were directly on this model. So if you had nested component structures, that really didn't work right and they weren't discoverable like this. Now what we did is we added Content Finder to our Command K menu. And first of all, if you haven't heard about our Command K menu, you can open it as the name suggests with Command K or Control K on Windows. And in here, there's many more things that are actually great to use besides Content Finder. You can see you recently viewed entries. That is also accessible with the button over here and here. And also it's super helpful to just navigate around your project. So you can open content tables, you can jump right into adding specific entries, you can add schema elements, you can jump into schema views as well, and even navigate to project settings. So super nice tool for power users to jump to specific things in your project. But now to Content Finder actually, and to get started using it with Command K, you'll be presented with this view here. You can click on this, and that actually switches right into Content Finder mode where you can then start typing. So just what we did as well, I can also search for a mug, and I'll jump right into that entry here, click on it, and brings me to the content entry, and I can see everything I need. Opening Command K again just brings up the previous results. So if I wasn't satisfied with what I found, I can just go back and do it again. And now the cool thing is also that I can find things that are within component instances on an entry. So I created one to just show how it works called meta title. And as you can see, it brings up a post here. And if I open that specific post, you can see at the bottom, I created a SEO meta title component with just that name, so I can find it here for the demo. But as you can see, even nested component structures would work here, and you can really surface anything within your project. Content Finder, as you've seen, is currently in a beta state. So if you have any feedback, any wishes for that feature for the future, please let us know. Give it a try, use it, and just reach out if there's anything you want to share with us. As a next thing, also related to content, I actually want to talk about content workflows. So this is something we launched recently as an enterprise feature. And we've seen from a lot of customers that there's typically a larger process involved to get content from inception to actually publishing, so to get it live on your application website, wherever it might be needed. And with content workflows, we try to build an adaptive way so that we can allow customers to bring their workflow to Hygraph and make sure that content meets their needs and their structure that is required to do so. So I'll jump right into the same project I just showed, and now we can do a demo of workflows and see them in action. So workflows can be found in the project settings right here in the bottom with the new section called workflows. This will either, if you don't have any, give you an option to even create a demo workflow, but I created here one just for the purpose of showcasing what you can do with it. So opening that specific workflow will always start with an initial setup. This one is there to allow you to define on which specific models a workflow should be used. So in some cases, it might be it might be valuable to just have it on a specific one, but every single model you have, you can select here and decide what you want to apply to it. Then also another thing is a workflow override. We've seen that in a lot of cases, there can be some kind of emergencies coming up where you just really need to get that content out, or you really need to make a change because there's maybe a typo that was missed or anything that really needs to change quickly. We added a workflow override. So in here, you can decide which type of roles, if you have custom roles, that would also be included, can actually override a workflow and publish right away, just so you can get that emergency solved real quick. Then in terms of configuring the actual workflow steps, a workflow always starts with one initial step and one last step. Typically, the last step is the thing that actually publishes your content entry to your publish stage, which is in most cases your production stage. And this is what you can see here. And then in the middle, you can add as many steps as you like, and depending on what your plan allows here. For this example, I went with an initial translation step, and we can also take a look at what you can configure for each step. First of all, the name is, of course, something you can set depending on what's needed here. You can decide for a color, and the circle will be filled automatically depending on how many steps you have. And then we have the step configuration itself. First of all, you can decide who has access to the specific step and can perform actions on this entry. So in here, you can choose any role that should have access, even custom roles if you have them. And then lastly, edit permissions, generally a thing where you can decide in this specific step, should someone edit this entry or not? Maybe it's in some kind of QA review stage and you don't want anyone to mess up with the entry that's currently there. So editing might not be allowed. And you can decide if that workflow, for example, in that step, you found a mistake, you found something that should be fixed, to where should it be returned to just maybe start over and do another translation run, for example. And then lastly, you can decide if you want to publish to a specific stage during that step. So in my example, we started with a translation flow. We can edit the entry. It's an editor and an admin that can do so. Then we move to a review stage. In here, editing is not allowed anymore. And you can return to the workflow started step if there's any mistakes that you found. And then as sort of the second to last step, we have the QA step, where you also would publish to the QA stage. You can review it on your preview website, see if everything is fine. And then lastly, go to the workflow completed step. So how does this look like for the actual editor, the developer using this in Hygraph? Let's jump back into our content. And in here, we actually have a post model where I configured the workflow. And up here, there's an indication that the block workflow is actually enabled here. And now we have a couple of entries, and we can see the workflow steps they are currently in. The cool thing is here that you not only can see the workflow steps, but we also have filtering available where you can say, okay, I'm a translator. I'm only interested in a translation step, so I can move these entries forward. So you can decide, give me every entry that is part of the workflow step in this model. Same for workflow started, just to get things going and move the entry forward. Then if you have an entry specifically, we can open this one up. The main difference you might see if you're familiar with Hygraph is that at the top right, there's no publish button anymore. This changed to the next step button, and it will also show you what the next step is. Additionally, on the sidebar, you'll also now have a workflow widget. And in here, you can see that, for example, what's the current step? You'll see the description that we provided for it. You can see that you have access for it and which roles generally can make a change here. So let's say I created this entry now. I'm fine. I want to move it to the next step. It tells me the next step is translation, so I can move it ahead. Now what I would do is I, for example, would add the German localization, add another one if there's one needed. And that's all fine. I'll move it to the next step. This is review, and it already tells me that entry editing is not allowed. So moving this forward, you can see all of the fields moved into a read-only mode. I cannot change anything here. I can only move it further if I have access. So I'll do that just now. And now we get to a stage where we actually start to publish the entry to a QA stage, which is a custom stage that we have here. I can decide to publish this now, which I'll do. Then we'll get to our typical publishing dialog, where I can decide which locals do I want to publish. Do I want to publish the related image as well? And I just move it forward. And then finally, we can move it to our final step, where we just publish it live. And now the workflow is completed. You can see here, we move to workflow completed. We have it published to our production stage and to QA, and the whole thing is done. And if you wanted to, you can now, of course, return to workflow started. Let's do it for a second. And then if I'm, for example, an admin where I would say, hey, like something is super wrong, I need to publish this immediately, I just click override. We get access to the publish button again. I can make changes here and publish them right away, and everything is good. And we solved the issue that was there. That's pretty much it for workflows. If you have access to it, feel free to give it a try. And if you're interested in it, also feel free to reach out how to get access to it. And that's pretty much content workflows. Next up, a feature that is mostly relevant for our developer audience, so people that mostly work with the schema of a project and are also involved in making just generally changes to the structure of the project and maybe wanting to port it to different projects. Schema-as-Code is the feature that we recently rolled out, and it's something that lives right in the middle between what I would say environment diffing and project cloning. If you're not familiar with environment diffing, it's a functionality that if you have multiple environments in your project, you can, for example, compare your development environment against the master environment to see what kind of schema changes are different between those. Then you get a list of the changes and you can apply it to master to put it onto the same state as development. And project cloning is just a way to copy a project and basically create a new one from that copy. So Schema-as-Code is living right in the middle between of that, because it allows you to essentially take an environment and get the whole schema definition of that environment and then use certain parts of it, if you're interested, in another project. So to showcase that, let's jump into a project A that I've created. This is sort of our source environment. We'll take the schema from here. Just to give a brief overview, we created 3 models in here. We have a couple of components. We have a remote source. And also we did create a custom stage. We created an additional local German. And we even added a workflow in here just to showcase what is possible to extract. Now, to use this functionality, you'll need to head into the API playground. Up top here, you'll need to select the management API. That's important because this is working with the management API, which is there for our schema structure. The query to fetch the definition is relatively simple. You ask for the project itself. You define which environment you're interested in this case, master. And then you just ask for schema definition. So sending this off, you will get back a schema definition array that contains every single schema element that you created throughout the process of that project. So we start with a stage, which is the review one I showed. We have a local German, we have a REST remote source, we have a component, and so on and so on. And this one can get fairly long depending on how large your project is, how large your schema is. Now what we can do is we can just take that array and we can head into a second project that I created. Just for the sake of showing this is an empty project. There's no schema, there's no content stage, there's no locals added, and there's also no workflow. And to actually apply the changes here, you'll also head into the API playground. And now what we have over here is a mutation called submit batch changes. This allows us to essentially provide a list of schema changes and apply them all at the same time without needing to do it one by one. The mutation itself takes an environment ID, so we need to fetch the ID for that environment we're in here, and then we can apply the changes right here, for example, with a variable. I've prepared this here just for testing, but I'll go ahead and remove the array that we had here before. I copy-pasted the one earlier, paste this one in. You can see the list is here. And now what happens if I send this off is we start to create a migration, a schema migration that runs asynchronous in the background. So let me send this off. We get back an ID, and now we can use a query to poll the status. So first of all, we see that it's running. This might take a couple of seconds now, depending, of course, how many schema changes you actually make. Now we can see it switched to success, so everything was applied. And now going back into our schema, we can see we created all 3 models. We created the components, and also even on our content stages, we have the review stage, we have the German local, and we even were able to port over the workflow from the other project. Of course, depending on what you want to do, you can remove schema elements, you can add other ones if you wanted to, but this is a super easy way to extract the current schema and then apply it to a different project. All right, and then next up, one thing that I want to share a quick preview about. Quick preview is our content loader. This is an app that we launched sort of in a private mode as of right now. We can, if you're interested, we can give you access to that as well. This one is meant to allow a simple import and export through Hygraph and allowing essentially both editors but also developers to have an easy way to get content outside of Hygraph but also inside of Hygraph. There's also a nice caveat that I'll show on how we can use it with even components. So jumping into the demo here, I've created a project where we have a fairly simple product schema, but we also did create a variant here. This is the important component we'll focus on. It also works with modular components. Just for the sake of simplicity, I'll show it with a basic component. And typically for a product, we have like a title, we have an SKU, we have a description. So things that are typically relevant for a product. Now to use that application, we'll head into the content view. And up here, we now have a new content view available, which is in this case, the CSV app nightly. So it's a preview as mentioned. Clicking on this will open the specific view that now allows us to both import and export. In this case, we'll start with an export just to show how it looks like. So let's quickly go ahead and select the product model. We'll click next. And now we have an option to select which export format we want to go with. We have CSV and Excel available. So with CSV, the thing is that it's a bit more simpler. It only takes fields that are on the top level of the model, and it ignores any components or any nested structures. With Excel, we're actually able to utilize our component structure and show how that looks like, and actually make changes to it or add localizations, and I'll show that in a second. So for the purpose of this demo, we'll take this Hygraph logo t-shirt here. I'll quickly export it. It will be downloaded in the background as Excel file. And I'll just quickly open a new Google Sheet over here. Then I'll get the file I just downloaded, drop this in directly, import the data. And then open the new spreadsheet I created. This is right here. And now, as you can see, first we start with an initial view where we can see the most basic fields that are on the model level itself. So let me quickly expand the rows here so you can see the content itself. But also a cool thing that just happened is that we also have an additional sheet down here, which is called product variant, which is the name of the component we've been using here. So clicking on this, it will actually uncover that we have even the component instances included here. So just to give an overview, I'll move back to my content entry over here. And just show you how it looks like. So you have the title here that you've seen in the Excel file. We have the description. And these are the three components that are interesting now in terms of importing them back and also adding localization. So we have a size S, size M, and size L, so 3 component instances. And we now want to add a Spanish localization, which is something we can super easily do by just going back into that Excel file. So as you can see, we have always sort of different batches that belong to each other. So we have the first 2. This is the size S one. So what I'll do is I'll insert a row below. I'll just take the same ID. So it's important that it links to the same entry ID. I will choose Spanish. Then it's important to also take the same name of the parent component or the field, which is variance. And I'll take the same instance ID because it belongs to the same one. And I'll just put in the Spanish name. What I can actually do is also remove these columns because we don't want to overwrite them. We don't want to change them. As soon as you remove a column and import back, they're just ignored and nothing happens. Now we can do the same for the size M. Quickly copy this over here. This is the German one. This is Spanish. And then we'll take the ID from here. Take the size. And then lastly, we'll do the same right here for our size L. Copy the ID. Like this, and then we can go back to our main entry, and here we can do the same thing. So we'll just add another row with the same ID. Use Spanish. I'll just, for simplicity reasons, I'll just write the name here. And then we can go ahead and import this back. So edit this here. Now I will download this as a Excel file. That's also important. So we keep the sheets information in here. I can head back to my actual web app, and in here we go back to our CSV Nightly app. We click import this time. We select for which product, in this case, for which model, in this case, the product. We'll select the file. I'll just quickly move this to my desktop so I can actually access this. All right, so we have it here. It already detected that we have 3 rows in here, Spanish, German, and English. And now we can also see that we have all the variants in here. We click import, successfully imported. We go back to our product, open it up, and then right here, we essentially have our Spanish text that we added here, and the same actually for all the component variants. We have the Thai S, and the same for M, and the same for L. So it's pretty easy to export things and import them back if there's any need for doing so. That's pretty much all from my side for now, and I'll hand it over to Daniil.
Thank you, Fabian. I do have a question for you, but we'll leave it until the end. And I also want to remind the audience to please leave your questions in the chat, and we'll get to you at the very end. Okay, so now it's Daniil's turn. Take it away.
Thank you. All right, that presentation kind of took me back to my university days, I have to say. You know that feeling when you have to kind of follow up like an incredible presentation of a different student, and now there's just you after all of that great prepared content, and you have to like match that. That's exactly how I'm feeling right now. So let's see what happens. But yeah, actually, jokes aside, very excited to show some of the cool stuff that we shipped on the other side of Hygraph, and also talk a little bit about the new things. One particular new thing called variants. Spoiler, but yeah, we'll get there. Anyway, so what I want to talk about first is a couple of features that were released earlier this year. I'm using still my I think this is a project I'm using for I used for like Euro 2024 back in the days to present some content about football. So we're gonna be using that project here today to talk about versions. And the version comparison is a feature that some of you already are familiar from Hygraph Classic, for example. And now in Hygraph Studio, there is this updated version of the feature that looks differently, and it has some new features. For example, allowing you to only see those fields that are different between the two versions. Here, by the way, I'm comparing my current draft with a previous version that I published just today. And this is always what happens. You have your current version, the current draft, or whatever you have in your content form at the moment in Hygraph, and then on the left side you would have any of the previously published versions to any of the stages. And then here I can already see actually with the help of this like different color treatment, different opacity treatment, that my headline is different, right? We're using different nations here in the headline, and it's clear that the subheadlines, slug, and so on does not changed. But again, if we move here to, for example, our component field, we can clearly see that the two quotes from the previous version are not present anymore in my current draft because I removed them. And I also added a different image that hasn't been there before. Now what I can do is I can either restore all fields at once, which, by the way, I can just do like that. And but I can also undo and then restore quite granularly to only go for a headline, for example. What I can also do here is I can switch between locales. I can show all of them. I can show just one of them, and that will also change what I see here, right? So for German, we can see that we still have the quotes. Something in there inside the components is different, yeah. So the locale support is also there. So that's our version comparison feature. We're going to press apply changes, and yeah, the changes that we restored, they have been applied to our entry. The quotes, for example, right? The quotes are here again. So that's version comparison. Like I said, this is a sort of a bit of a reimagination of the feature from Classic. So if you have tried that new version in Studio, please share feedback. We are very happy to hear all kinds of feedback and also use that later to, ship further iterations of different features. So there's versions, and then the other feature that we have a sneak peek into here, it's called DeepL Translate. So it's an integration that you can already access through our apps section here in Hygraph. You can install it, and basically this is an automated translation flow for your content. And the way it works is that, as it tells you here in the empty state, only enabled and visible locales can be translated. So first we need to add a locale, for example, German, and press translate all. We can do it for both locales. We can do it only for one. So for example, for German, press and translate all. We have a very handy, very useful note here that says translation will override content existing fields in the target locales. But I'm going to press yes translate because I've just added the German fields, and there we go. I was actually quite surprised and positively surprised myself how fast it all works, and especially, I guess, well, maybe just my background, because I used to translate those kind of articles at the beginning of my career, and having it all done in a blink of an eye is just incredible. And yeah, of course, we need to go through that and check that DeepL did exactly what we're looking for. By the way, fields inside components are also supported, of course. And yeah, but as a translator, you only need a quick look to understand that, okay, we have the same structure, and then we can also use perhaps other AI powered tools like different kind of spell checks to make sure that it's all good. But that's something that you would expect really from DeepL. So that's those are the two features that have been released already that are available to everybody. And now we're gonna move into the future. We're gonna do some extreme sports here, which is presenting the feature from the development environment. So this is a feature called variants that is in progress at the moment, and it's extreme sports because our developers are like literally touching the code for this feature right now. And yeah, let's just hope that the demo goes fine. Let's see. So variants, what is it? Variants is a feature in Hygraph that allows you to build the proper personalization setup with Hygraph. Sometimes you could just leave it at Hygraph for your if you're just starting out with your personalization setup. If you don't need to collect a lot of data about your customers, if you do, then you would need something like a CDP, a different platform, maybe a personalization engine that will decide which variant to show to which end user. We're not going to cover it today. We're going to cover it in our documentation and later streams and videos. But right now, I only want to show you what we have inside Hygraph now. This feature, like I said, is still in progress. We're going to be releasing it later this year in autumn, but there's already a demoable state here. So we start with assigning this variant property to really any field in our model. So this is an important concept here. So we don't do model or in full entry personalization. You can decide, you as a user, as a developer, you can decide which part of your content entry should be personalized, right? Should have variants. So for example, here in my article model, I say the title should have variants, and I do it by selecting this enable variants checkbox right here. And so slug obviously stays the same. Summary, content, layout selector, and the sections component, they will all have variants. But the coffee beans carousel, yes, this project is a different one. It's about like a coffee store, online coffee store. And the author relational field also is the same because I'm going to be creating all of the variants. Now, once we're done here, we can go to our content editing part. Which shows us exactly why you don't present features on a development environment, right, folks? But I have it here already. Don't you worry. Everything is already cached, and everything is already there in my browser. But basically, what you would do after you set up your model, so you define which variants, which fields would have your variants, you would go to the content view, where you have the maybe already existing entries, maybe some of them that are maybe you'll start creating new ones. But before you dive into that, before you dive into content creation, what you want to pay attention to is the segment view right here, which is a collection of segments that we'll later use here in our variants in the content entry. Here at the top, we will have a yeah, maybe I kind of skipped over it, but let's quickly have a look at this main entry view. And the most important part here is that we have the variants section in the right hand side. So this is where exactly the variants of our main entry live, and the as you can see, it looks very similar. The variant form and the main entry form, they look very similar, but the main difference is here at the top where we are able to attach a segment to a particular variant. So let's see if we can have a look at our segments view. Let me actually try to hard reload this one, because that happens sometimes in the development environment where new changes are being, new changes have just dropped there, and we have a bit of a kind of a traffic jam, let's say, a situation where you need to wait a little bit for the new changes to be applied. I guess the segment view, basically segment view is going to look exactly the same as a regular view of your content entries, where you'll be able to create all kinds of segments, right? In my case, what I have here are the new user segment right here at the top, plus the other two I created before, which are loyal users and returning users. You can create many different segments. Those for some users, there would be way less kind of clear and way more, let's say, targeted, such as users who opened the Black Friday newsletter campaign and have some items in their cart. That is a segment that can definitely be viable, right? Because you would want this particular people to see maybe a particular offer or a certain image. But so in that case, you will have to have them as a segment. What you can also actually do is you can have two separate segments. So the segment for people who opened a newsletter, and then people who have some stuff in their cart, and then you can marry those segments inside your code. Basically, you can attach several segments to content variant. One important thing to also mention about variants here is that you will always start creating a variant from a starting point, and the starting point is the content of your previous entry, of your main entry, right, of the previous state. So here, when we have summary and content, and this is especially helpful with components, for example, because you don't need to recreate this component structure again in your variant. That's already there, right here. So basically all you need to do is in many cases, all you need to do is just make a few changes specifically for a specific user. For example, here I changed the title, right, to talk about the new faces of specialty coffee. And I think also what I did is I changed the FAQ to cater to the new users, because probably this is the question that they're gonna ask, which beans to buy first. And on the main entry, we're talking about the quality of water. So as you can see, the content of the main entry and the variant, they can live their own lives. They don't affect each other. Later, we want to add a feature where you would be able to kind of fetch the content fetch the main entry's content from the variant if you want to kind of redo things. But in general, variants and the main entry, they live sort of separate from each other. So you can also prepare variants, for example, already after you publish the main entry. You can decide that the new user's variant goes live tomorrow, but the variant for loyal users goes out in 2 weeks. For whatever reason, that is also possible to schedule those and publish those separately. So that's an overview of the variant feature. Maybe the last thing that I want to quickly show you is something more relevant for the developer audience, and it's the way you query your variants. And the structure here of the query is relatively simple, where we're always gonna start with our main entry, with the main model, right? The article in this case. We're gonna fetch the fields that we need for that article, and then inside the variants part of our query, we're gonna fetch the same fields for the variants. And this is what we're gonna get here on the right-hand side. We have a title, The World of Coffee, the main article, the main entry, and then we have the title about the new faces of specialty coffee for the new user segment. And this is what we can also do here. We can also filter, of course. We can fetch all variants at the same time, but we can also filter by a specific segment. I think I'm not following really best practice here. You shouldn't really use like a string field in your query. Ideally, it would be something like a slug field that, by the way, will also add to your segment definition, so that you avoid all the funny business with spaces and things like that you can find in a string field. And in that case, you will only get the variant for that specific segment. We can also request the segment specifically here to make it easier for us to understand that we have fetched exactly the variant of that segment that we're looking for. All right, so that was a very brief, but also kind of a very quick overview of the upcoming variants feature. We're very excited to get this done soon, and yeah, well, hopefully next time I'm already going to be presenting it from like a production project with the front end already connected and everything. So yeah, this feature is coming soon. That is all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniil. I do have a questions for you too, but we'll wait until the end. There's one more thing that Fabian wants to present to us. So remember to put your questions in the chat, and I think, yeah, we can get started with the last part, Fabi.
Okay.
I'm going to add your screen to the main stage.
Awesome. Thank you, Angie. Also looking forward to see what customers will build with our new variant feature. So super excited to see that actually in production soon. Another thing which at the time of us planning the actual broadcast here, it was still upcoming, but now it's really fresh off the press. A feature that we just released in the last weeks for enterprise customers is taxonomy management. And with taxonomy management, we really wanted to solve a problem that we've seen with a lot of customers that were not super satisfied with using just a flat tag structure, because at the end of the day, their hierarchical structure really needs to be in a hierarchical tree, right? Anything needs to be, there needs to be a parent-child relation between those, because as you can see on my small screenshot here, that, for example, with a topic, business, there could be things like leadership, marketing, or with engineering, there's back and front end. So it's not just a flat structure, but things really sort of inherit from each other. And it's important to have that tree structure when looking at different content entries, and that also allows for super nice filtering and organization, which I'll show in a second. So jumping into my project from earlier, the way to use taxonomies is to essentially jump into your schema management, which is right here. And on the bottom left here, you'll see our new section, taxonomies. If you have access to the feature, and even if you don't, you'll still see an empty state here, so you can understand what it does. You can jump to our docs, but you can also add a demo taxonomy just to see how it looks like, how it feels, and play around a bit. For the purpose of this live stream, I just created a demo taxonomy to just show how that looks like. In this case, super simple example. So we take our merchandise shop again for Hygraph, where we have a product category. And in this case, we start with apparel-like things. So an apparel can be an accessory, it can be a top, but we also have office supplies, which can be desk gear. And in this case, a mouse pad, for example, that belongs to the desk gear. And we can also have stickers. And if I wanted to add a new one, it's also super simple, where I just click Add Child Node. In this case, drinkware would be maybe a mug. So we add this here, and then a second later, everything is here. And we have now that new taxonomy created, and we can nest it even deeper if we wanted to. So how can you use that now? And what does it change compared to enums? Jumping into my product model here. And on that product model, I already created a taxonomy field. This actually uses the taxonomy that I just showed. And now we can head into our content editing. And over here, we can already see there's a preview of what content, what category is assigned to each content entry. But this also allows some pretty nice filtering capabilities to really find things that you're looking for. So to start off, we click on filter. Now we have a category filter available here. We can do exact matches. So we can say, I want everything that is actually a top, which would bring back the Hygraph hoodie here. But we can also do a nice thing and say descendants of, which is kind of like a filter that allows us to look at a specific node within the tree and filter everything that is either tagged with that node or anything below in the tree, which is super helpful. For example, I can say I want to just have a look at all of our office supplies. So I'll tag office. And now I also include mouse pads and drinkware because they belong to that actual path of the tree. So for the Hygraph mug, we can actually open this up. And we have our category here. If we click into that field, we have a preview of every single node. And the cool thing is we can also see the actual path. So if you're not sure where mug comes from, we actually know it's of drinkware, and then it's coming from the office one. So we can actually apply this here and save it. And now the nice thing also for developers is that at the end of the day, you can use the same filtering from your applications as well. So jumping into the playground, there's a small demo I prepared here to showcase we are asking for some projects. And in here, our classic where filter, where you ask for the category descendants of, you provide the value, so the API ID of the taxonomy node, in this case, office. And if we send this off, we get back our API mark. But we not only get back the tagged value, so you can see the value is mark, but we even get back the full path. So for every single entry, we'll know that the mark category is part of drinkware, is part of office, is part of our top level node product category. And that's essentially it for taxonomies. I hope you give it a try. And if you have any feedback, any comments, any questions about it, feel free and let us know. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Fabi. I think it's time for us to get started with the questions, as we do have a few last minutes. And first, I'll get started with my questions, as I do use Hygraph a little bit, so this is also pretty relevant for me. The first one's for you, Fabi, and it's about the content finder. Does it handle any of the special characters?
Yeah, we built it in mind with that. So, for example, classic in German, you have the umlauts, right? Ä, Ö, and Ü. And same for café, right? We have the E with the accent on top of it. So if you search for that, we'll just normalize it to the classic E and then match it like that. So whenever we have these special characters, it will find a match as well.
Yeah, I think that could definitely make it a little bit easier. So the other ones are for the variant. This is for you, Daniil. How many segments can a variant have?
Yes, that's a really good question, and yeah, I think I also mentioned it already in the talk, in the presentation. So basically, it's maybe a funny little note that so we've presented even earlier version like prototypes, mockups of this feature to different customers, and the first question I think almost in every single case was, "Hey, can I have more than one segment attached to a variant?" That was one of those kind of signals from users that you cannot ignore. And obviously, there are a lot of use cases where this is possible. So to answer the question shortly, yes, it is. Well, you can have as many segments as you want, really. Well, it depends really on the kind of plan that you have, but let's just say that more than one. I think that's the most important thing, right? You can have more than one segments attached to a variant. The two most important use cases for that would be kind of what I briefly touched upon, which is like kind of marrying two segments into one, like maybe a demographic trait of your audience plus a behavioral trait. So maybe people who live in a city center and who already have a product in their cart, right? You take those are two different segments, but you put them together through this basically ability to have more than one segment in a variant. And then yeah, I think that's one of the main ones. Then also in some cases you would want the two different segments to have the same experience, right? And you don't really want to have two different variants. You just say, okay, this particular variant we're going to show it to city center dwellers and also people who live in the countryside and travelers. They all going to see their variant, and then the fourth segment will see something else.
Thank you. I do have another question on variant, but I do want to go with your question first, and then we can ask the other question on variant. When you showed the CSV import feature, it said something in the parentheses for the app. Is the app already generally available?
Yeah, as of right now, the app is in like a preview mode. So with that, we typically do create like a nightly version. So it's kind of like just essentially a preview where we can test the things a bit, right? Share it with customers, see what feedback we get. So as of right now, it's not publicly available yet, but we're also planning to do that relatively soon. So we're just getting everything ready. There's still a few things we want to include based on feedback we got already. So yeah, it's in the works, but as of right now, it's a preview. But if you're interested, just let us know, and we're happy to onboard you.
Thank you. The other question on variants, can this feature also be used for A/B testing?
Yes, that's a great question. So the short answer is yes, it can. And then basically the idea is going to be quite simple, that you can have a segment. Maybe also that is like a case for this dual segment sort of a thing. You can have a segment that with the name of your campaign, maybe, right? If your use case is, for example, you're running a campaign and you want to understand which CTA and which hero image convert better. So what you would do is you would have a campaign segment, and then a variant A, variant B segment. You would marry them together, or you can actually have just one segment called campaign, Black Friday campaign variant A, and then the other one Black Friday campaign variant B, and create the two different variants, and then clearly see the difference between them inside Hygraph, and then use different kind of A/B testing engines to handle the rest, right? To handle kind of serving the different variants to different audiences, and then the analytics as well. We will have some documentation around that, how we suggest implementing that later when the feature is when the feature launches.
Thank you. That will be interesting to test, actually. We do have a couple more minutes for any last questions, but in the meantime, I'd like to plug in a couple of future events we have coming up. We do have a new series at the end of the month, August 27th. So we have a series on content architecture led by our head of solution architects. I want to put that in the chat for all of you to save. So together with Isam, we'll be going live, and we'll be talking initially about best practices on content modeling. And this will be a continued series where we'll talk about building it better, all about content architecture. And if you do want to save other events that we have coming up, we have live streams, another part 2, vibe coding with Dino, and a few webinar events coming up. So I'll look at the comment section just for any other questions or comments. No, I think we're good to go. Just want to plug in one more thing. You can always try Hygraph for free, and you can sign up for our product for free. I'll link the link in the chat below. I'll also put it up in the screen. And I want to thank Daniil and Fabian, everybody who tuned in today for the program. Thank you very much. And I hope to see you in the next ones.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.